the 2 p.m. City Council meeting of January 18th, 2022. There being no further business, that meeting is adjourned, and we will reconvene the regular City Council meeting business session at 6:06 p.m. All council members are present, and Councilmember Bearfield is present via Zoom. Welcome to all of our guests and visitors. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation, regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you are here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is able to be brought to you. Now, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business is to consider the minutes of December 21st, 2021, the joint City Council meeting and McLennan County Commissioners meeting. Also the December 21st, 2021 regular City Council meeting and the January 3rd, 2022 special City Council meeting. These minutes were provided to you in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections? If not, those corrections will stand as approved as submitted. And the first order of business we have are 3 proclamations with me tonight, for tonight. So the first, I'm going to have the China Spring, a representative of the China Spring football team to meet me at the podium. I'm going to start with a little intro. We had 3 state champion football teams in the city of Waco this year. And Live Oak Classical School, China Spring High School, and Lorena High School. And people might not know this, but Lorena ISD has a portion of it in the city of Waco. China Spring has a big portion of it in the city of Waco, and obviously Live Oak is located here in downtown Waco. So we are excited to celebrate these champions. Waco is a city of champions. That's been a theme that we've kind of adopted this year as multiple sports programs have seen some great success and great victories here in our community. So this is our first proclamation of the night. I, Dylan Meek, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Waco, do hereby proclaim January 18th, 2022 as China Spring High School football team Class 4A Division II 2021 State Championship Day in the city of Waco and urge the people of Waco to join with the city council, city staff, and me in congratulating the China Spring football team and their coaches for advancing to and winning the 2021 state championship. China Spring defeated Gilmer 31-7 and completed a perfect 16-0 season and claimed their 2nd state title in school history. The city of Waco commends the 2021 China Spring High School football team for their sportsmanship, motivation, and team spirit. Congratulations, and we wish you continued success. And witness whereof, witness my hand and the seal of the city of Waco, this 18th day of January 2022. Well, here you go. Thanks for being here, sir. Next up, we have Lorena High School. I'll read this one now. I, Dylan Meek, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the city of Waco, do hereby proclaim January 18th, 2022 as Lorena High School football team Class 3A Division I 2021 State Championship Day in the city of Waco and urge the people of Waco to join with the city council, city staff, and me in congratulating the Lorena High School football team, their coaches for winning the 2021 state championship title. Lorena beat Brock 35-18, finishing a 2021 season 14-2. We are pleased to publicly commend the 2021 Lorena High School football team for their fine efforts, sportsmanship, motivation, and team spirit. City of Waco extends our best wishes for continued success. Congratulations. Congratulations, Chris. And last but not least, we have Live Oak Classical School. This is going to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to do it. I, Dylan Meek, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Waco, do hereby proclaim January 18th, 2022 as Live Oak Classical football team TAP's six-man division 2021 state championship day in the city of Waco, and urge the people of Waco to join with the city council, city staff, and me in congratulating the Live Oak Classical School football team and their coaches for winning the 2021 state championship title. Live Oak beat Faith Academy, Marble Falls 46-41 to claim the title and complete a perfect 14-0 season. We're pleased to publicly commend the 2021 Live Oak Classical School football team for their fine efforts, sportsmanship, and team spirit. The City of Waco extends our best wishes for continued success and congratulations. Congratulations to all these great programs. We're so thrilled for your great wins and that y'all are in the City of Waco. Fun stuff. And now we'll move on to our public hearings. The first public hearing is 2021-010.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance abandoning a 20-foot alley located between James Avenue and Spade Avenue and from South 23rd Street to South 24th Street, and further described as a .16 acres of land in the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, being all of a 20-foot alley located between South 23rd Street and South 24th Street, shown on a final plat of Lot 16, Block 4 of the Zell Edition, recorded under instrument number 2020-033868 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, retaining a sanitary sewer easement, providing for a condition of the abandonment. The applicant must provide exhibits and field notes from a registered professional land surveyor for each adjoining property owner to the City of Waco for quitclaim deed preparation, finding no duty to maintain, authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finding determinant the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of abandonment based on the following findings and conditions read in the ordinance. The findings are the public use of the right-of-way is not required for proper flow of traffic or for emergency vehicle access to the area. And then utility access for surrounding properties not adversely impacted by the abandonment of the right-of-way.
Thank you, Clint. Are there questions for staff? If not, we will open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval of the abandonment on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Boderoot.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries. And we will move to public hearing 2022-11.
Members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Lance and Ashley Kelly for a short-term rental type 1 in R1B zoning district on property described as 3.12 acres of land in the J.M. Stevens survey, abstract number 784 in the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, and being that called 3.12 acres conveyed to Mark A. Sanders and Marion Ludi Sanders by deed records of instrument 2003-036085 in the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, described in Exhibit A of said deed in Tract 1 and Tract 2 in Volume 709, page 217 in the McLennan County deed records, and a .43 acre parcel described in Volume 673, page 303 of the said McLennan County deed records, also including that those two parcels of land described in the deeds to William W. Brazelton and Lynette L. Brazelton in Volume 880, page 446, and Volume 881, page 482 of the McLennan County deed records, and the residue of a called 4.4 parcel of land described in Volume 638, page 261 of McLennan County deed records, inherited by Lynette L. Brazelton per affidavit of record in Volume 111169, page 333 of the said McLennan County, Texas, known as 5601 Oakview Street. By a vote of 7-0, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. 2, the proposed use is compatible with the appropriate and orderly development of the area in which it is located. 3, the proposed use will not be more objectionable to neighboring properties because of traffic congestion noise, fumes, vibrations, or any other characteristics than any use permitted in the zoning district without the grant of a special exception. And 4, that available community facilities and services, including the road system, providing access to the proposed use are adequate for the proposed use. Staff is recommending an additional special provisions and condition to the Plan Commission recommendation that states only the guest house may be rented out for short-term rental of the property. And we did provide those updated resolutions at your place. Also, we did, right before the meeting, we received a petition in opposition from the neighbors. There is in the ordinance, if the people that signed the petition own more than 20% of the property within 200 feet, it triggers a supermajority requirement to approve it by City Council, which will be 5 out of the 6 council members. Because we just got this petition before, we would need some time to calculate that to see if it triggers that supermajority.
I know that some council members have a particular interest in knowing whether or not that supermajority is triggered or not. So I'm wondering, Jennifer, would it be available for us to continue this matter if we wanted to?
So, Mayor, y'all would, yes, you could, but you would need to open the public hearing.
Okay.
And then anybody who wants to speak tonight would be given the opportunity to speak tonight, so they can have a choice whether they come back or don't come back.
Okay.
And then you would not close the public hearing. There would need to be a motion to continue it to a date certain. And what I mean by that is, if y'all wanted to continue it to your next council meeting, the motion would be to continue it to February 1st,
Right.
2022. Is that the next council meeting? Yeah. So, or if it's not that one, the next one, but it needs to be a date certain.
Great.
And Mayor and staff, along those lines, my understanding is from the work session that there were 19% of the neighbors were opposed to it. Is that correct, Mr. Peters?
So it was a combination of people that had submitted written opposition, that spoke at the Plan Commission members meeting, and then provided concerns. If you add up, those persons own 19% of the property within 200. We would just need to verify that this list includes that and then any additional ones.
We just got a new petition.
We just got a new list.
Right, and so
Yeah.
what I was wondering is, if we just took this agenda item out of order, would you just be able to calculate if one more residence, or if those residences are listed here, as opposed to just having everyone come back? And
I think to be certain, we would need more time to that, because we'd have to verify if those same ones are on this list as well.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm thinking wasn't it homes of 15, wasn't it 15% actually had signed it, and we got up to 19, incidental or anecdotal? This looks like it pushes it over, but I respect the fact that we need to.
Yeah, and the other part of it is that they have to be the owners of the property, so we'd have to
Right.
verify that as well. So I wouldn't feel comfortable being able to provide that information
That's great.
at this meeting.
And we'll let everybody speak tonight this year. Any other questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing, and I have a couple cards here tonight, and the first one is Ashley Kelly.
Is there a way for me to delay me talking until
This is the applicant. One moment.
Yes, I mean, you could wait, because we'll have to, if y'all, well,
Do you want to, I'm sorry, Ashley, do you want to delay your discussion?
Yes, just until I can hear
That's great.
the ones that are here that are in opposition?
Sure, that's perfect. Thanks, Ashley. Because per our protocol, you have a rebuttal anyway, so you'd be able to come back up. The first we have today is Miss Janice Jones Kriegel.
Jones Kriegel. I live at 2324 Rosewood. My property adjoins theirs through the ravine. I own rental property in that area, and I had thought once when the B&Bs started, popping up before all the regulations came in, that I might do that. But I'm so glad I didn't, because I have had an opportunity. The cards that the city sent out were not big enough to write all of our concerns on. So I did the petition, and I went from door to door to the neighbors, and we all discussed it. And I found out the majority of the neighbors do not want that in the neighborhood. And so I respect my neighbors, and I'm thankful that I did not petition to have mine as a B&B. Most of these, you've got 2 other property owners that do adjoin their properties also here that are going to speak. we have, I'll share my findings with you. There were two people that just didn't care. They didn't care one way or the other. And there were two sets of people that didn't want it in the neighborhood, but they were friends with them, so they declined to sign the petition, which I understood. There was one man that was for it completely. In fact, his property kind of joins theirs at the back, and he's thinking about putting cabins on his property now, since all this has come up. And we've had crime in the neighborhood. We have fought gangs up there at the Mountain View Park where they throw their tennis shoes up and the Waco police have to come out and, take them down. We had our own little squad that went around in conjunction with Waco PD at one time. We had drugs everywhere, and we had drive-by shootings on Linneman Street. Just recently, in the last 6 months, we've had things stolen out of people's car. We had a guitar across the street from me stolen. And we just feel like that right now, things are awfully quiet, and we just don't want to bring more strangers into our neighborhood. But most of these people do own their homes. I didn't know if the owners had to sign it, or if the people that were renting that live there, because it affects them, and the owners live out of town, some of them. So I don't know that that's quite fair. But that's, if it's a law or legal, I do understand that. But I hope that you all will respect the majority of the people that have signed this petition. And I hope that you will respect their wishes. And I'm very glad that I did. I'll say that. And if you do pass it, I will wonder about y'all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kriegel. The next we have is Frank Andrell. Am I saying that right? Andrew Lee. Sorry about that.
Janet and I are cohabitate 2324 Rosewood. I'm a local retired CPA, and I've been through this mess with some of my clients who chose to do this, and of course they themselves regretted it later because it did open up their property to a lot of other strangers in the area. I noticed at this point that, of course, the tour buses are not supposed to go into your area by city design, but yet they come to see Chip and Joanna's house over there on Wooded Acres. It does create a parking problem at Wooded Acres over there. They've got 5 spots on their property, and sometimes up there's 5 or 6 cars there. So you can have more than that, but that's a 2 or 3 bedroom house. This is supposed to be a 1-room cabin. I don't think it will exist as a 1-room cabin whenever you put it out to lease to people with 4 parking spots. I know that as a fact. I had people who had bed and breakfasts in Mahia, in Temple, in McGregor, and I represented them, and they did not at that point feel like they should have had to put up with the extra stuff that has to happen with a short-term rental. They are not what they're designed to be whenever you consider the whole aspect of that property. And the only way y'all can assess this piece of property is to get an aerial map of that heart of that neighborhood right there and see what it is with an aerial map. I myself was astounded as to what that piece of property is and what it could be if the wrong people came into the neighborhood. And that's my say. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next we have Robert Wireman.
Thank you. I want to echo what she said about the cars that are mailed out. Not only is there not enough room on those, there's not enough time to get those in. They give you, once you receive it, you have probably a week to send it in. There wasn't enough time to send for everyone to get those in. I've also lived in the neighborhood for about a little over 20 years. The upgrade to Mountain View Park has led to more traffic, more trash, more gunfire. It's increased, well, the traffic in the neighborhood. And I'm going to stop with this. If you would not want this in your neighborhood, please don't let it in our neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. Next we have Robert Wireman. Oh, sorry. Mervyn Pacheco.
Good evening, members of the council. I oppose this resolution or this permit. I live next door. I have a 3-year-old grandson, okay? And this is a very stable neighborhood, a very safe neighborhood. But of late, there has been crime, there has been more traffic, you know, and I don't want, as I said, strangers coming here and messing the ambiance of this whole neighborhood. That is my primary concern. For example, the people who want this, who want to do this, they had a party somewhere around Christmas or Thanksgiving time, and my grandson's bedroom just faces there, and he couldn't get sleep. So, I mean, that is just one instance. But when you have other people coming in here, and we don't know who they are and for how long will they be, and this transiency will definitely not bode well. And again, I echo the sentiments of Robert Wireman. You know, if any one of you would like that type of rental, when a thing is zoned residential, if that type of short-term rental, would any one of you like it in your own neighborhood? And if you don't, then I think it's very unfair that we should be contending with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
May I tell you one thing about the paper that you have that we got?
The petition?
We got a
Mayor, I believe the speakers had the full 3 minutes. Is that correct, Trish?
It's left, actually.
Yeah.
She has, no,
Oh, yes.
I just need to tell you, we have one more signature that's on the original, whoever has the original, that's all I need to tell you.
thank you, ma'am. Next up, we have Aaron Griggs.
Hello, I'm Erin Griggs, and I'm here speaking for this short-term rental. I have been a person who has done short-term rentals for a long, long time. In fact, my family started doing it the year I was born, 44 years ago, and has gotten together for 44 years in someone's home, renting in a short-term way for 44 years. So we have been the beneficiary. And I will say it really depends on who the owner of the property is, how that short-term rental is going to go. And I absolutely agree with the neighbors that spoke as far as I wouldn't want just anyone to host a short-term rental in their backyard or any property to be available. However, this piece of land is 3.5 acres. It's situated where the main home, where the Kellys and their 4 children live, between the street and where the guest house would be. The guest house is set back. So between the street and the guest house is actually the owner's home. So they are actually going to be the ones most concerned with the safety, with the noise, with the type of renters that they have in their home. And they have done nothing since they have lived, the owners in this home, but improve it. They love the neighborhood. They love the lot of land. I just can't see any reason that it would be anything but a benefit, just to continue to improve and have that cottage rented out a little bit. I can also say that there are plenty of parking spots in the Kelly's home. So we actually stayed in this very cottage for several months, and I don't think disturbed any of the neighbors. There were 4 of us living here, not as renters, just as family members, and I don't think even anybody in the neighborhood even noticed, except that maybe there were another car or 2 in the parking lot. I think that is it. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. That is all the comments other than from the applicant. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Ms. Kelly.
Good evening. My name's Ashley Kelly. My husband Lance Kelly could not be here this evening, but myself and our 4 children occupy 5601 Oakview. And I'm grateful I get to be here tonight, and hopefully me being up here can alleviate many of your concerns. We have been occupying this space for about 3 years, and I believe that I've been drawn to the same things that you all have been here for decades now. We have been attracted to its proximity to Mountain View, the neighborhood it's set aside, and I can promise you that our desire to keep the neighborhood in the way that you have viewed it for the last several decades, that we hope to maintain, and we will maintain, that we will be discerning in terms of our short-term rental, who we choose, because in fact we do choose who it is that we will occupy. In terms of the questions about adding more space, I think that was a concern. And this guest house has been occupied well over half of the time that we've been there in the last 3 years, and I don't believe it's been a disturbance to our neighborhood and the feel that everyone has voiced this evening. We don't have any, and again, don't have any plans to build. I think that might have been a concern. It's a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that my husband and I are looking to do just as what was spoken earlier, which is to just rent out a shorter portion of the weekend months. And again, hope that I answered some questions this evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? All right, we will, right now I wanted to see, I believe you've spoken already, sir. Thank you. As Jennifer mentioned already, if we wanted to make a motion to continue this to verify the petition, that could be a motion that could be made now. Does anyone, before I close the public hearing, though, we would need to make that motion.
Okay, I'll move that we continue this public hearing till February 1st, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Fairfield. Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and so what we'll be doing is verifying the names and addresses on this petition, and the purpose of that will make sure that everyone here can make an informed decision as we cast our vote. Thank you, everybody. The next public hearing is Public Hearing 2022-12.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots 6 and 7, Block 6 of Farm Lot 21, known as 1229 Washington Avenue, shall be changed from C3 district classification and be designated in the C4 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finally determining that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 6-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request to change the zoning from C3 to C4 based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for Greater Downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in C4 zoning district. And 3, the C4 zoning is the dominant zoning along Washington Avenue, starting in this block and moving east towards the Brazos River. Also, following up on Councilmember Rodriguez's question about alcohol sales, this property is within 300 feet of the Columbus Avenue daycare facility, so there would be a prohibition on alcohol sales in the C3 and the existing C3 zoning and the proposed C4 zoning. There is an exemption to that prohibition for restaurants that hold a food and beverage certificate, which is requires 50% more of the revenue coming from food.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any questions for staff on this item? I will open up a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak? Would you please say your name and address for the record?
My name's Jed Cole, 1503 Washington Ave, Waco, Texas. Just here to answer any questions.
Thanks, sir. Any questions for Mr. Cole? Thank you, guys. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
And looking at this, for the public, we, as you may or may not know, we had a massive housing study that we looked at a few weeks ago, and there was lots of talk about zoning and in short-term rentals. So in digging into this property, I saw that even though this is in market type C, which is has the highest number of short-term rentals in the city, this is a massive property. It's over 4,000 square feet. And so if the main difference between a C3 zoning and a C4 zoning is the potential for short-term rentals or potential for housing, I don't think that if this were to move in that direction that we would lose an affordable housing option, which is important to me. And for that reason, I will be voting in affirmation.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Fairfield,
Yes.
aye. Voterroot,
Yes.
Palmer, Holmes, Meeks.
Yes, that motion carries, and the next public hearing is 2022-013.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 of Chapter 28 Zoning and Said Code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described as lots E2 and L2, Block E, the McCall tract known as 518 and 524 North 5th Street, shall be changed from C3 district classification to become designated into O2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the zone change based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the Imagine Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O2 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O2 zoning. 4, there's O2 zoning in the vicinity of subject property. And 5, O2 zoning brings the existing residential uses into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Are there any questions for staff?
Clint, can you confirm that both 518 and 524 are currently being used as residential properties?
Yes, that's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Clint, I have a question. And I know that we have access to this information and perhaps should have asked this earlier, but my question is, what would be some reasons, or what does the zoning change allow to the going from C3 to O2? What does that allow for? Why would what are the reasons that someone might apply for this? What is it, the opportunity that it creates?
Yeah, I guess the main reason would be because in the existing commercial C3 zoning, you can do all types of office uses and commercial uses. The O2 also allows office uses, but also opens it up to lots of different types of residential uses, from single family up to a multifamily property, or potentially short-term rental residential use.
Why is it that people, if it's being used as residential right now? One of the things you mentioned earlier was when I talked to you just a minute ago, you said sometimes people apply for this because their lender might be requiring them to get to a conforming use. Is that?
Yeah, I don't know the specifics on this property, but we do see that quite often where there's a residential use in a commercial district where the residential use is not a permitted use by right. And sometimes the lender will require, if there's a property transaction, the lender will require the property to be in conformance with the zoning. So we do get zoning requests, based on that need to satisfy a lender.
Mayor, if I might, Clint, would you explain what happens if one of these houses that's a non-conforming use were destroyed by a fire, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, so the existing residential uses on the property are considered legal non-conforming, so they can, as long as they're continued, they can continue as a residential use. If they're converted over to a commercial use or permitted use, then they can't go back to a non-conforming use. Or if they're stopped, the use is stopped for a period of 2 years, then they can't continue it as a non-conforming use. If a non-conforming use is damaged by a fire or natural disaster, in the case of a residential use, they can rebuild the residential use, but they are limited to the restrictions and requirements of that commercial zoning, which sometimes can be a little bit more restrictive than what you have in residential as far as construction.
Okay. Got it. Thanks, Clint. Any other questions for staff? All right, we will open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Please say your name and address for the record.
My name is Dan Obat, and I was the applicant, and I'm here to answer your questions to the best of my knowledge, if I can.
Any questions?
City Attorney Ritchie, are we allowed to ask whether or not the lending component and zoning is part of the reason for this application?
Sure, but what I would suggest is that we need to be really focusing on this as a zoning change and not focusing on one particular use. Because once y'all make the zoning change, any use in that zoning district is allowed. So to answer your first question, yes, you can ask about the lender, but I might not ask about some of the other questions y'all are discussing at the work session.
So I would redirect that question to you, sir. Is part of your purpose in seeking this zoning change to be in compliance with any sort of lending that you're engaged with?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval of the rezoning on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, and going back to the housing study, North Fifth Street is a very mixed income part of town, and this also falls into the market type C, where we have the highest number of short-term rentals, recognizing that that isn't necessarily the only use, but is certainly in the current zoning, short-term rentals are not allowed, and if this was to switch into O2, short-term rental type 1 and type 2 are allowed, and both of these properties are currently naturally occurring affordable houses, of which we have a dire shortage of in Waco. With the housing study, we saw that we are like over 5,000 units short of houses that are affordable for residents at 0 to 30% of our area median income. And as these houses are currently listed online, that falls within the 0 to 50% range. And for that reason, I have hesitation to move forward on this and will not be voting.
Is there any other discussion? I'll just say that this highlights, I just want to bring something to highlight that I think is a problem that this council has really worked hard to address the concern, the multiple concerns that are addressed, some of them expressed tonight, but some beyond that, by short-term rentals, including but not limited to the impact it has on the affordable housing stock in Waco. And one of the dilemmas that I think this notates is that, well, I want to be thoughtful. I think this just brings to forth an issue that we need to resolve regarding how we address our concerns regarding the supply of short-term rentals in our community. And another distinguishing component of this is that it's already zoned as commercial, so it's not protected as residential to date. But I think that Councilmember Palmer brings to light a very critical point, and I just think that my desire for staff would be to continue to look at how we can protect our affordable housing stock with regards to the matters like this that might come up again. Any other discussion on this? Yes, ma'am.
Mr. City Attorney, can I ask, is Mr. Obat the owner of these two properties? I know he's the applicant, but...
Sure, you're more than, and Clint may know the answer to that question.
Mr. Obat, Hezbollah Obat is the owner. I'm his son, so I was the applicant. I'm applying on his behalf.
Okay, so he owns these two properties?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions for staff or any other discussion? All right, I will, please poll the council.
Barfield.
Yes. Yes.
Borderoot. Yes. Palmer. No. Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-014.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 of Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed on a certain property described as Lot 9, Block 29, Glenwood Edition, known as 2304 Washington Avenue, shall be changed from C2 district classification and be designated in the O3 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding determined that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the request for zone change based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan and the imagined Waco plan for greater downtown. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O3 zoning. 3, the property meets all the area and width requirements for O3 zoning. 4, there is O3 zoning in the vicinity subject property. And 5, the O3 zoning brings the existing residential uses into conformance with the zoning ordinance. Also, Councilmember Palmer requested the number of STRs within the area from 18th Street to 25th Street in Columbus, Washington, and Austin Avenue. We do have currently 18 STR licenses within that area.
And how many of them are on Washington specifically?
So there's 12 on Washington, 3 on Columbus, 2 on Austin, and then 1 on 25th Street.
We have 12 short-term rentals between 18th and 25th on Washington Avenue.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for staff? We will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? And I do have a card, Mr. Sibley.
Good evening. I'm Jonathan Sibley. The address, this is 2304 Washington. I live in Woodway and 202 Cypress Court. I'm here to answer any questions that y'all may have. Happy to be here on state championship day. Fly Falcons fly. So.
Any questions for Mr. Sibley? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? I'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval of the rezoning request on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mayor, I think to reiterate what you just said earlier, I think all of these zoning changes, particularly in these market type A, B, and C, are cause for a larger evaluation from staff. I want to see our neighborhoods be mixed use and have amazing services for neighborhoods and residents to enjoy, and also be incredibly protective of our limited housing stock. And with a zoning change, we just don't have all of the data to make the best informed decision. And so I think that puts us in a precarious decision to know what the range of unintended consequences could be. Again, we just heard there are 12 short-term rentals within a few blocks on Washington Avenue. I have just watched Washington Avenue in the vicinity of Uptown and Pinewood change really quickly. And as a neighbor and as the council member for this district, that's something that is concerning to me. So I don't know what the solutions are. I'm eager to hear Clint and City Manager Ford what your recommendations are, but I think these are important nuances and complexities for us to continue wrestling with, especially in light of how challenging and convicting that housing study was that we saw just a few days ago.
Any other discussion?
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, I think where we run into the crisis is the number that there are from that small block radius is a lot. And, we have to take each of these cases case by case. The instance on Fifth is different to me, simply in that, that is kind of the residential neighborhood houses that are in that area are legacied and have been there for a very long time, but it is by nature a very commercial corridor. I don't think that is the same in the instance on Washington, in Austin and Columbus. Some of it is and some of it isn't. And I think the further you go uptown, the more residential you get. So it is a very sensitive dance that we have to do, very gentle dance that we have to do. The housing study did prove a lot of information and showed us just how lacking we are in some things and in particular neighborhoods. However, we just got the study, so our action plan going forward has not been, fully realized. I think that the one concern is that the zoning change makes for possibilities, but we don't necessarily know what the owner's outcome will be, or what choice that they'll make and why they decided to go or apply for this zoning. I mean, the only thing I'm concerned about is we're making a ruling on without full knowledge, one, and worst case scenario, when that may not have been any of the intention of the owner, and it wouldn't change that much from what its original zoning is which is commercial, to this zoning change. So I'm not sure, Clint, if you know its intention or what it is if the applicant stated what their intentions were, or even if we can know at this point. But I think that may be helpful in our decision making.
And also, Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not supposed to question the applicant on their intended use. Is that correct?
So when y'all make a zoning change, the best course of action is to consider all of the available permitted uses, because even if the applicant tells you they're going to, I'm going to run a gas station, they could the very next day do something else. And so really, and that's why y'all have the zoning books in front of y'all when there's a zoning change,
Sure.
that y'all can look at all the permitted uses, because not that an applicant would ever misrepresent things to you, but you got to consider, because you're changing what anybody could do in the future for that property, whether it's this
Sure.
applicant or another applicant.
And I echo the sentiments that have been expressed, and I'm proud of the compromise that city staff brought to us and that we adopted unanimously. I believe it was maybe early summer, but it was last year, which restricted where short-term rentals can be granted, and it took it out of primarily residential areas in terms of the most hot-button short-term rentals that we see. And we got a little taste of that tonight with kind of the the type 1 in our first hearing. And to Councilmember Palmer's, point is essentially, yes, these are proxy wars for short-term rental permits, which essentially the workaround is change the zoning. And I think in these mixed areas, mixed in terms of mixed zoning like the Washington Stretch and like Fifth Street, you see a lot of different uses, and so we're not seeing the whole neighborhood come out because the neighbors are, commercial business owners, they're, multifamily units. There are some, residential neighbors. I, live near here myself. So the complexity of this is, it's quite profound in terms of what we're limited to inquire about, but also to Councilmember Palmer's point in terms of the effect of this. And so it's a difficult, it's way more nuanced than I think our original short-term rental changes were back in 2021. So I don't know. I suppose I'm just hesitant to fight the battle on each one of these and treat them as short-term rental battles when they're asking for a zoning change and there can be multiple uses. That having been said, the likelihood is that they do turn into short-term rentals. But I think that's where I feel kind of my hands tied as a council member on this.
Is there any other discussion? This is hard because if this was, it's difficult to know how, what to do, as Josh echoed, because this is one of those things where while it creates opens a wide door up for multiple different zoning uses. One of them is of concern, but for me personally, I appreciate the discussion that we've had tonight and think that there's just a little more work to do on this as we move forward. So I look forward to that.
Mayor, I'm sorry,
yeah.
I should have spoken before you.
No, great.
But I do appreciate Councilmember Palmer's observation on the concentration, because I would not have guessed there were that many in that particular area. To me, it's mitigated somewhat by its commercial and office use, which is what this is zoned for. So it's, to me, not as severe as looking at this in a residential neighborhood, as Josh pointed out, as Councilmember Bordard pointed out. So I suggest that we do kind of do a study on how really short-term rental concentrations may be, regardless of the zoning, that we look at that a little bit closer. I'm going to support this one because I don't like changing rules in the middle of the game either. I hate that. So I'm going to be supportive of this this change request.
I just have one comment. I know you all don't know, but I live next door to a short-term rental. I asked that it not be approved, but it was approved anyway. I haven't really had, other than the first couple of 6 months, I had a little problem with the noise. But going over and talking to the owners that have to be at the house, it's really helped with the noise. So they keep the noise down, especially during the Baylor games. People come after the games and are wanting to celebrate. He's cut that out for the neighborhood. So just so that y'all will know, and to answer the previous applicant, yes, I live next door to but if they're like my neighbors, they will take care of what needs to be taken care of, or their permit will not be renewed. Because if I call and say, hey, this is disturbing the neighborhood, I know the city will go over there and pull their permit. So they understand this, and so we need to understand that as well. It can be handled. It can be handled. Staff has made it to where we can handle it by calling in a complaint, and they will notify the owners of the building and the home. And they will take care of their permit. They will. So, I mean, my neighbors do. So I'm going to support this. You know, like we said, there's a big concentration, but then I didn't realize you all had passed something that says we can't put them in some of the zoning. Is that what I heard you say, Josh? I did not know that.
In
But-
residential areas, we've
Well,
tightened it up a little bit.
Well, my house is in residential area, but it was still allowed. I'm not gonna let y'all forget that.
Councilmember Rodriguez, is your neighbor the one, is it the on-site, so they live there while
They
it's
live
rented
there.
out?
They have 2 buildings in the back of their house, a garage apartment and another little house that they use. So there's 2 homes, 2 houses that are being used for short-term rental, plus their 4-bedroom, 3-bed bath home. So it's a big area, but like I said, at first, the noise was a little irritating to me as an older lady, but the neighbors are good enough to keep the noise down. So knowing that their permit can be taken away from them, they will follow the restrictions and the limitations on their permit. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and approve for myself this. And just wanted you all to know that y'all did put me in that position. But
Clint, I have a quick question for you. Do you know what this space is being utilized for now? And I'm sorry I didn't ask you that, Mr. Sibley. To reopen the public hearing. Ask him.
My understanding, the house is just residential, and then there's a small office in the back.
Okay. Good. Do I need to reopen the public hearing? We'll reopen the public hearing. Mr. Sibley, thanks for that. Sorry about that.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the consideration, and I understand the push and pull back and forth on this. To give you an idea of what I'm using this for, there's a back building that I'm using currently as my law office. And so I won't be living on premises, but I will have an office that will operate, during the week on premises. And then the front part is a house that I will use as a short-term rental if approved. I own about 11 duplexes in the area, some low income and some other, some Section 8, some other types that are in that neighborhood and related kind of nearby in the Bosque corridor. But this one is going to be an office and hopefully a short-term rental if approved. Thank you. Any other questions y'all have, I'm happy to answer.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Please, public counsel. Thank you about that, Jennifer. We'll reclose the public hearing. Any discussion? Please, public counsel.
Bearfield,
No.
Rodriguez,
aye.
Roderoot, Palmer,
Aye. Sorry.
No.
Look at these new orders, got me messed up.
We had order.
Palmer, I'm sorry. Holmes,
Aye.
Meek.
No, that motion fails. Next, we will consider
Fails, did you say?
It fails,
Fails.
correct? Yes, ma'am. That motion fails. We will consider the consent agenda. The following resolutions were pulled from the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Resolution 2022-20, 2022-21, 2022-22, 2022-23, and 2022-24. Is there a motion on resolution 2022-20?
Approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Public counsel.
Bill,
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we'll move to resolution 2022-5. Next, we'll move to resolution 2022-21. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please, public counsel.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Holmes,
The motion carries. We'll move to resolutions 2022-22. Is there a motion?
approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Aye.
Holmes,
That motion carries. We'll move to resolution 2022-23. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Holmes, Meek,
Yes. That motion carries. Resolution 2022-24.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. We'll move to the consent agenda, which consists of resolutions 2022-15 through 2022-19 and 2022-25 through 36. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move for approval.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Voterit,
Aye.
Meek,
Yes. That motion carries, and we will move to ordinance 2022-37.
Of the City Council of the City of Waco, Texas, authorizing the issuance of City of Waco, Texas General Obligation Refunding Bonds, Series 2022, in an aggregate principal amount not to exceed $28 million, providing for the award of the sale thereof in accordance with specified parameters, authorizing the execution and delivery of documents and agreements in connection therewith, approving the preparation of an official statement, enacting other provisions relating thereto, declaring an effective date, and finally determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you on first and final reading pursuant to Texas Government Code 1201.028.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on first and final reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Aye.
Voterit,
Yes.
Palmer, Holmes, Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. And Jennifer, it's my understanding that we need to have another motion and a final reading. Is that correct, or is it one motion?
No, we're fine.
Okay, great.
Oh.
The next item on the agenda is to consider ordinance 2022-38.
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Waco, Texas, authorizing the issuance of one or more series of City of Waco, Texas combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, in aggregate principal amount not to exceed $116 million, levying a tax and providing for award of the sale thereof in accordance with specified parameters, authorizing the execution and delivery of documents and agreements in connection therewith, approving the preparation of one or more official statements, enacting other provisions relating thereto, declaring an effective date, and finally determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed and open to public as required by law. This ordinance comes to you on first and final reading pursuant to Texas Government Code 1201.028.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
First and final reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Voterit, Palmer, Holmes, Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2022-39.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, amending Section 1883 and Chapter 18 Personnel of said code, providing the number of police officers, police sergeants, police commanders, and assistant police chiefs authorized by the City Council, providing a savings clause, providing for inclusion in the code, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open to the public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval. on
Move for
first
approval
reading.
on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez, Voterit,
Yes.
Palmer, Holmes, Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2022-40.
An ordinance terminating reinvestment zone number 2 for tax increment financing on February 28, 2022, making findings and containing other provisions relating thereto, providing a savings clause, authorizing the city manager to execute any documents in connection therewith, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open public as required by law. This ordinance comes to council on first reading.
I'll move for approval just out of the joy of being able to move and vote on something related to TIF, even though it's the last TIF 2 item.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield,
Yes.
Aye.
Palmer. Holmes. Mate.
Motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2022-41.
An ordinance amending the project and financing plan for reinvestment zone number 1 for tax increment financing, TIF or TIF Zone 1, to amend the agreement with Washington Partners LTD for public improvements associated with the repair and renovation of a 2-story building at 729 Washington Avenue. Said amendments to include an extension of the project completion deadline and reduction of the TIF funding to $292,200, with the project being within TIF Zone 1 in Waco, McLennan County, Texas. Authorizing the city manager to execute any documents in connection therewith, providing an effective date, providing a savings clause, providing a severability clause, and finally determining the meaning at which this ordinance is passed and open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 4-0 council vote on first reading on December 21st, 2021.
Is there a motion?
I'll move for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Phil.
Yes.
Aye. Holmes.
Yes. That motion carries. And now for the hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters for consideration listed on the agenda. Council is unable to conduct discussion, but will listen, ask staff to look at concerns, and provide a follow-up. Please provide registration of information so staff can contact you as necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is able to be brought with you. We do have one card tonight, and that is Mr. Ephraim Herring.
My name is Ephraim Herring, 1046 Chestnut. I listened to your January 10th survey from Mullins and Long Gang and your community staff. And I had some urgent information come up to my brain that really threw a red flag. The one that came up was affordable housing. I live in that triangle, the triangle of Preston, Live Oak Street, Chestnut Street, and Garrison. I live in that triangle. Matter of fact, I live right across from Doris Miller YMCA. That's my property right there, and I own 2 other properties in that triangle. So a red flag came up when it said in your handout and your PowerPoint that the inspector for affordable housing will inspect every 2 or 3 years to make sure that the property is within city ordinance. I started August 1st, actually July 25th, about the house built at 1046 Chestnut, which was approved by the city of Waco. It's not in accordance with the approved plan. It's not in accordance with the Waco Development Guide for 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and I haven't seen the one for 21 yet. So I'm looking at that, and January 31st is when y'all are supposed to get feedback from that group. And the other thing that came to my mind is gentrification. Because that area y'all just blocked off, there's a family that's been there almost 100 years. Elderly family, living in that same neighborhood. One of the things that came back in 2010, when I was talking to Will Austin about, was gentrification in that area. So everybody's looking at the YMCA right now. It used to be on Live Oak Street. And now it's at Paul Quinn College, which now everybody thinks y'all trying to basically just erase Paul Quinn College from the map. Because right now, there's nothing on there saying Paul Quinn College anymore, outside of the Johnson Hall, which I remember when I was a kid coming up. I grew up in that whole neighborhood. And 1960, I started in that neighborhood in 62, and I've been there back and forth ever since. The question I had is, since y'all done passed this house, it was in violation. So I went to find documentation, just in case that y'all come at me about my house And I had a disturbing find that everything that was supposed to be in the file was there except for the certificate of occupancy that was signed and given to Neighborhoods Waco. It's not there. So now my question is, why that document is not there? And last but not least, and I'm gonna get out your hair so y'all can go home and enjoy yourself, is when are we gonna do something about, I see y'all did $6 million for road improvements on 2022-18. Are we gonna do sidewalks on Elm Street? We're gonna complete that. Because it's not there now, people walking in the street. And 33% of Waco is below the poverty line. And I guarantee you 75% of them live in that East Waco area. Y'all have a blessed day.
Hearing. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during the hearing of visitors? If not, we will close the hearing of visitors. Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, or commission liaison visits? Are there any requests for future agenda items? If not, there being no further business, we will adjourn at 7:17 p.m. Thank you.